Welcome back, everybody, to the inaugural Women's Health Expo. We are here in Sydney on Gadigal land today, and I am really excited to be having these four fabulous women to interview today on a subject that is very close to my heart, both personally and professionally, being maternity and motherhood and the critical services that women and families need at that critical moment. So on our panel today, we have got Chris Barnes from the Gidget Foundation. We have got Sharlene from Karitane. We have got Kelly from Tresillian in the middle. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. And we have got Julie. Welcome, Julie, from PANDA. Julie is joining us virtually today to remind us that we are in the year 2022 and where we all remember how to do online events all the time. So Sharlene, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
And I'm going to ask, what are the top things to remember when adjusting to life as a new mum?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Georgie. I think one of the greatest things when we're thinking about adjusting to parenthood and talking to mums is that every journey is unique and no story is going to be the same. And I think for some women, they think that it has to be a certain way, I have to feel a certain way, I have to act a certain way. But what we've found is that women really need to take that journey, their own personal journey, not put too much pressure on themselves. Certainly arm yourself with all the information, surround yourself with really great people and supports and your community. But it is a time of adjustment, and I think as a parent, every parenting stage has its own adjustments to how children grow, how they'll be in the world. So I think that adjustment period is really take it slowly. Some mums feel like they've lost a sense of themselves, their identity changes, and I think it's really, like I said, arming yourself with that information, taking it day by day, and being surrounded by the people that can really support you. So there's no one great answer to that, but I think it's really keeping a really open mind. And you know, if you don't feel, well, the information out there on social media, there's some really great information that we have access to, but social media doesn't always portray it the way that you might feel as a parent and as a mum. So I think that having a really open mind and, you know, walk your own journey.
I know I certainly felt when my husband and I had our first baby, I did feel misled by the Huggies ads. You know, I just was like, hang on, this does not look like that. And I mean, look, our eldest child is nearly 12, so that was a while ago. So social media wasn't quite as prolific as it is, and I'm actually quite grateful that I started the parenting journey without that. Yeah. Kelly, I'm going to ask you, what are the health and wellbeing priorities for new parents?
So I suppose it's really important that new parents look after themselves, try and remain calm and enjoy the moment, take things one day at a time. Remember, this is a stage and it is over very quickly. So make sure you get out for a walk, think about doing some regular exercise, have a nice well-balanced diet with lots of snacks available, and drink water. Plenty of water to thirst. Make sure you rest as much as you can. So rest when baby sleeps, relax when you can and do something nice for yourself, and make sure you get to bed early. Work together with your partner to get things done around the house. Make sure you get some time out and hopefully have some quality time with your partner. Think about getting a babysitter. You might even look into childcare or occasional care. Sometimes it can take a little while to get a place in childcare, so look into that quite early. You might think about joining a parents group or a play group. Make sure you talk to your friends and family about your feelings. Ask for help when you need it. Make sure you're aware of the community support services available to you in the community. And if you need to, think about getting a referral to somewhere like Tresillian or Karitane. Make sure you speak to your child and family health nurse, your GP, or call the parent helpline. So Karitane, Tresillian and PANDA all have parent helplines. If things are getting challenging, make sure you think about getting referrals to services. Or starting off with maybe Tresillian or Karitane, and then if you're needing a bit of extra support with mental health, there's services like PANDA and the Gidget Foundation.
Yeah, thank you. And we've actually just got up on the screen a few of the helpful contact details for some of those organisations. Now, my next question was going to be for Julie, if we can. There you are, Julie, welcome back to the screen. I was wondering if you could talk us through what are some of the support services that are available to new mums as well as mums-to-be.
Thanks so much, and thanks for having me. And sorry I can't be occupying that wonderful chair there on stage. I couldn't fly in, so my heart goes out to everybody in New South Wales. As everyone's already spoken about, there's kind of no wrong or right to how people access supports and the supports that they themselves choose. So we have this wonderful fan, I guess, of services, as we often think about them at PANDA, in that we have our national support lines, so those that are funded, such as PANDA, the Head to Help sites, Lifeline, suicide support services, and now the For When service to help support people to navigate through the system. We then also know that people who may be experiencing increased vulnerability in the mental health space and really not know what's going on and concerned that they're a risk to their bubs may need to present to an emergency department in those more complex times in their life. But we also work really hard as a service system and for everybody sitting on the stage to be able to skill up and inform the primary health setting, so your GPs, pharmacists and allied health providers, to understand and be able to provide support to people in their local communities. What we often say to those on the ground is to not feel that you have to be able to reach out to a service at a particular time or have the right language to be able to unpack what it is you're feeling, but just know there are a range of services and supports that are out there and that there should be no wrong door. So just starting the conversation somewhere is better than nowhere at all.
Yeah, thank you very much, Julie. Chris, I'm going to ask you a little bit there on the sort of mental health of new parents, of mums and mums-to-be. Obviously, the Gidget Foundation does phenomenally important work in that space. What do you think is the picture at the moment for parents' mental health and well-being?
Well, usually, and this is pre-pandemic, 1 in 5 women and 1 in 10 men in Australia had some sort of perinatal anxiety and depression, and that is about 100,000 families a year. And I think all of us at Karitane, Tresillian, PANDA and other organisations would have seen the demand for mental health services go up hugely. At Gidget Foundation, ours has gone up more than double. So it's been huge. So I think those statistics will change a little bit once we sort of catch up from that. So I think that people's mental health during this perinatal period can be really wobbly, and it's a very vulnerable time. There's lots of adjustments, there's a lot of isolation, there's so many sort of transitional things to go through to get your head around being a parent. So it can be tricky. So I think normally, a lot of people get through it and it's okay, and they've maybe got extra supports and they're fairly healthy functioning, they've got good coping skills, but a lot of people don't. And even if you do have those things, you can still really struggle. So I think that in general, perinatal mental health needs a really strong focus, and that's why it's really lovely to have this opportunity today and to highlight a lot of the resources that are available.
Yeah, I wonder, there's absolutely no doubt that the pandemic has exacerbated so many pressures. It's created new pressures. But at the Parenthood, some of the work that we're involved in is ensuring that parents are supported to care, not just mums, but mums and dads are able to. And I certainly know anecdotally that with the working from home situation, it's a couple of my friends who had their first baby in 2020 during the first shutdown, they actually got the benefit of having another person home during the day, and there was that sort of realisation and understanding that actually being home with a baby all day is long and it's isolating and it's tricky. Have you seen that borne out in the families that you're all dealing with, in the new parents? Am I imagining that that's an upside, or do you think there has been a sort of some benefit to both parents potentially being at home more?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably say for sure there is that benefit, and I think all of these services we were actually able to I'm using the word pivot and offer service virtually. And what we saw, the upside of that was certainly parents being at home, but also to be at home accessing services in their own homes. And that was really came from sometimes when they come to a Tresillian in Karitane, they might think, I can't do this when I get home, but actually they were doing that. They were really empowered to make those changes and get that support. So certainly that was one of the upsides of being able to be in the home and look what I've done, look what we've achieved. And so that is definitely an upside in all the challenges that the last 2 years have presented, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the wonderful thing has been that people's counselling services at Gidget and other places has not been interrupted. And thank you to telehealth, we've been able to use video and even telephones and getting mums with their babies to walk around the block and still talk to us. You know, it may not be the ideal therapeutic environment, but it was better than not having it at all. But I think there's also been an increase in DV as well, in family violence. So I think partners being home, that sort of thing wasn't always ideal. And I think it depends on the partnership and what's happening in that household as well. I mean, we've had women talk to us in, their wardrobes and things. And we can't always do probably what we do in the counselling environment. If there's a partner walking around, we have to make sure that they have privacy, and that wasn't always possible. So I think it's been wonderful, and now the sessions are extended. People can get up to 20 free sessions at the Gidget Foundation, which is wonderful. But you've just got to be very mindful of the environment as well, and what's at home and what that person has been managing during this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Julie, can I ask you about that? What difference, if any, you've sort of seen because of the different dynamics?
Yeah, most definitely. At PANDA, and with all of the services that we interact with, we've been really mindful that people have, informed us, as Chris was saying, that, our cases of partner violence and having partner there have impacted on people's experience and accessibility of services. We've also heard that parents have really loved being able to bring dad into the picture and be able to have a conversation as a partnership with supports like ours and others. But we also know that mums are speaking about a sense of grief and loss of having that time one-on-one with their baby to be able to grow and foster their relationship. And there are lots of impacts that we've spoken about here, but also in that grief and loss, not about an actual loss, but a real perceived loss of people's experience and time with their baby, that I think we need to take into account, because it kind of supports how somebody's sense of identity shifts and evolves as they become a new parent, and how they then take that on through their life. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, I think that that sort of concept of ambiguous loss is something that for all of us in different ways we've sort of had through the pandemic. But I think it probably is very pronounced for new parents, even just things like I felt very, my heart went out to families who weren't able to sort of have that. I actually personally, from my own experience, I loved not having visitors in hospital. When I had my third, it just happened that it was over Easter and everyone was away, and I actually loved that. I think not having visitors in hospital might be a benefit, but I really felt for families who couldn't have that sort of welcoming the grandparents and the community to meet your little person, because that is something that really matters. Kelly, I'm interested to know about what is the picture like with accessibility to services regionally? And maybe this is something that because of the pandemic, the virtual health has helped, but what is accessibility to services like regionally?
So we've been using quite a bit of telehealth at Tresillian. But we have just had funding for Tresillian to open a number of regional and rural services. So Tresillian's growing, and that's making it more accessible for women in New South Wales. We also have a centre in the ACT and on the Albury-Wodonga on the Victorian border. So I think that is making it more accessible for women in regional New South Wales.
I wonder whether, do you think that moving forward the role of telehealth will continue as I guess it's interesting, Chris, what you said about depending on the situation, being at home might be fantastic or it might be absolutely disastrous. But I suppose also touching on what you said with the cutting out the commute times, for example, and being in the privacy of your own home, maybe it is easier for people to reach out and say that they're struggling?
I hope so. I hope that it hasn't been another barrier, because speaking about mental ill health has such a stigma about it anyway, and we want people to be able to put their hands up and say they're struggling. You know, a lot of people say it's meant to be the happiest time in your life, but for a lot of people it's not. And we know that, so we want people to be able to get access to resources wherever they are. We've got 18 offices Australia-wide, and we do telehealth. Even before the pandemic, we were doing telehealth, luckily, so we could switch over all of our clients to that. So I hope that it continues. I hope that in some ways, I think our therapists love the face-to-face because you can get on the floor with the babies and do a lot of lovely work. But the telehealth is just as effective in experienced therapist hands as well.
And I think it's about choice. That's what it comes down to. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Sometimes it can be blended. It might be, we do some face-to-face and let's transition to online, or you can change those depending on the family circumstances. And I think that in many ways, some services have always been, it's about families coming to us. But I think it's really about us being able to go into service, into homes and access families where they need us, and they can tell us what suits their family the best. And it's, I think out of anything, we've learnt a lot about that.
Yeah. This question might be like asking, how long is a piece of string? But what are the sort of primary challenges that you see that, new mums are facing at the moment?
I think it is a lot about, certainly we do a lot of work in the corporate space as well with, big organisations, and I guess what we're seeing is families really struggling with that transition, I think, is really adjusting to that and thinking, do I have to give up my career? Can I have both? Can I have it all? Whatever that means. I'm not sure what having it all means, but, and I've certainly... I think that's one of the challenges is, perhaps losing that their self-identity or image, but it's the adjustment of, it's just changing, and then, what choices they're going to make around that with their partners, with different organisations that they work with. So I think it is like how long is a piece of string? I think in the immediacy, I think it's coming back together as community and connecting with family that perhaps they've grandparents, some children were born in COVID and actually haven't been to play groups, they haven't been out in shopping centres and seen people without masks. So there's this whole sense of, early childhood and this transition to parent that's really changed. So, but I really do see families really struggling around those early stages about returning to work as well, particularly for mums.
Julie, what would you say you're sort of predominantly experiencing at the moment with new mums?
So PANDA has probably seen an increase in the number of parents that are reaching out to us because, their English is a second language, so therefore they're having access issues to the right supports on the ground. 43% of our callers at any one time have quite complex mental illness, either because they've had a history of mental illness or a birth trauma that's really heightened their need for services. So we are seeing more complex presentations that really need to be connected into services on the ground, and where GPs need to be provided with support to better understand how people are navigating services and also how to hold people within general practice. We've also, still seeing a number of people that are really disrupted by, as you said, by the Huggies ads and by, the social media around what a family should look like, and that hasn't really shifted as much as many of our services sitting on the panel today have. We've been really resilient and responsive and pivoted, as Sharlene said, and I think, the cultural piece and social media space hasn't really done that so well. So
I'm interested to know about the role that you think, and this was mentioned with children not attending playgroup or mums not having the capacity to be part of a mother's group. Is that something, Chris, that you've seen, or Kelly? Is that causing problems for mums or children?
So I think it's been hard, but I think a number of parents have been able to connect online. So they have had playgroups online, which has still been an option, although they're not been able to meet face to face. Hopefully that will get easier this year. But yeah, I think it has been really tricky because I think these new parents feel so isolated, and that connection and getting out with friends and meeting new parents with families is so important at that time.
Chris, what do you think about that, the role of mothers groups?
I think they can be really special to people. I think it depends on the group that you end up with, and making sure that it's quite an accepting, non-judgmental group, which it's not always. So I think it's finding your supports wherever you can that works for you and what you need at that time. And I think I was thinking about the other question when you were talking too about where we need to focus our supports for more culturally diverse communities as well, and the LGBTQI community as well. We're seeing more of those clients too, so we need to make sure that we are ready and prepared and educated enough too with all of what their diverse needs are as well. So coming back to the mothers groups, I think people have missed those a lot, and I'm really hoping that we'll have a bit more normality this year for everyone. They are pretty special in a lot of ways, and a lot of people carry those friendships right through. But it's just really finding your support where you can, whatever that is.
Yeah, I think one of the, in my experience, we were living overseas when we had our first baby, and we were in the UK and I was in a mother's group, and having sort of 8 other families, and in the UK they sort of do it, so you do your antenatal classes as couples if you've got a partner. You do sort of 6 weeks, and then the idea is there's a 3-week period and everyone ultimately might have a baby, and then you can continue on. And it was quite nice to have the couples part of that group. And what I found hugely beneficial was that when you've got a little baby, the weeks really matter. And you so if you've got a great friend that's got even a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old, it's so different to having a 6-week-old baby or a 4-month-old baby. And I think having that access to other people who are at the exact same stage as you. Not that, everyone's experience was always different, but I think that was something that really helped me with our first baby. And I feel for families if they haven't got that access to other, to other families at a similar point.
Yeah, definitely. There's that sense of, when you're challenged sometimes with who I am as a parent, my identity, and so like I said, it changes all the time, but at that particular time it's identifying with those people that are going through something very similar, and whilst every experience is different, when you walk into a group that is non-judgmental and nurturing, and I haven't slept all night, they go, I know exactly how you feel. Give me the baby, can I make you a cup of tea or coffee? Goes such a long way, and that can mean the world to someone who's had a really tough night, tough week.
We have definitely touched on this, but one of my observations is that we don't sort of fully appreciate the scale of adjustment that is having a little baby. Like bringing home a newborn it fundamentally changes you in your life. And I think that because it is so normal, it's part of what, it's the reason that humanity persists. We sort of, I think, sometimes underestimate the full extent of that. Would you agree, Julie? I'm conscious I don't want to leave you out because you're over there on the screen, but is that something that you would agree with, where we could there is scope for sort of more education and discussion around the full transformation that occurs?
Most definitely, the adjustment, whilst not, a category 1 diagnosable mental illness is so fundamentally there and something that we need to provide support to people to navigate, as they come to terms with their stress and anxiety and whatever it is thrown up for them. Again, going back to the threads of everything we've spoken about in terms of how we adjust, how we learn, how we evolve, how we identify. And for many people, don't forget, this is the first time they're going to experience an adult failure or a feeling of failure as they actually parent a child and feel that they can't connect in the way they should be or the way society expects them to. So, it's a really confronting time for people, and setting people up to understand that, even rocks crumble, there is no rule book, near enough is good enough, and all of those wonderful analogies we throw around really are important, because you need to go easy on yourself. And the first thing we say to our callers at PANDA is, go easy on yourself. This is a new process. You're constantly learning day by day, not only about this little person, but how to be a parent, how to be a person in the world with a baby, with a family.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I've mentioned the antenatal classes that we went to, but I remember so vividly one thing that the woman said to us, and she said, look, the reality is that childbirth and then taking home a newborn happen at exactly the same time. She was like, childbirth would be much easier to recover from if you didn't take delivery of a newborn the minute that happened, and vice versa. Taking a newborn home would be much easier if you hadn't just had the physical and emotional, and even if we talk about a fairly straightforward birth, it's a birth, and it's sort of this perfect storm of incredible emotional, physical labour. And I also just think that I know that each and every person that reached out and rang any one of your services, just taking that step, the courage that takes.
Yeah, lots of courage. Yeah.
Because it's so scary to ask for help, and particularly when it is something like raising a baby where we want to get it right so badly, and the idea that we're not is just devastating. So I think it's fantastic that the services that you all run are available, and I hope that more and more families of all backgrounds feel able to access those supports, because I think they're incredibly important. Is there anything anyone wanted to say before we finish up about encouraging families how to find the right services, what they can do?
So I think, with all those websites that were put up before, I think that that's taking the first step. And talking to other parents, there's lots of, we're all on Facebook, we'll have social media, and I think really connecting in, and, local GPs and child and family health services are a great, universal service that are out there, and start talking really early.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's such a big change, and I suppose parents need to know what services are available and use them.
I think all of us are totally unprepared for parenthood. So I think that with all these organisations and others, there are many resources online and tip sheets, and so please just go and have a look around and see what you need.
Yeah. Julie, have you got any final reflections?
And I think, I was going to say, I think finding the right service or the right way to talk about what it is you experience can often become the barrier. Ultimately just reaching out. Any one of our services works in partnership to connect people if they're not right for our service, and that's what we do, and we weave together the supports we provide as a sector. And I think, for parents, often they're trying to find the right way to talk about what it is they're experiencing without having ever been there before. So, don't hesitate. It doesn't matter if you don't have the language, and it doesn't matter if you've not hit the right service, because we'll help you find the right service in amongst all of our offerings.
Thank you so much.
Can I just add one more thing?
Yes, and also because if there are any questions, we've probably got time for one or two if people have questions.
Just a lot of people may not even realise that they are struggling because they think it's a bit normal. So there might be people watching today who might notice one of their friends or family members are struggling a bit. So even starting that conversation gently and at a good time might be good too. Yeah.
Do we have any questions? No. I will just finish by saying that one of the tips I always give friends when they are trying, if you want to have one of those difficult conversations, often the best way to start it is by showing vulnerability yourself. So I highly recommend never ever go and visit a family with a new baby with makeup on, ever. Turn up looking as tired as they are going to feel, and even just by virtue of doing that, they might feel a little bit less overwhelmed. I just think that sometimes probably the most powerful way to start those conversations is to admit that you've struggled that yourself or that you are struggling. Because as we have talked about in all of the sessions today, it is this stigma that often gets in the way of individuals seeking the help that they need. And I think that there is a role we can all play in breaking that down, and that is by being open and honest and vulnerable with the people around us. And I think that bringing a new baby home is one of the primary times in anyone's life where you need to see some vulnerability so you feel okay about your own.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and we'll be back shortly.